if you look at the interest of a number of emerging economies in the natural resources of Africa, we believe this is the time for Africa. But the challenge is for Africa to convert that opportunity they have with natural capital to invest in structural change, investing in manufacturing, investing in other growth and productive sectors of the economy. As it is today, the share of manufacturing in GDP is about 9%. Africa's contribution to global manufacturing value added is 1.2%. We're marginal. For as long as these economies do not transform and restructure and begin to add value to their natural resources, agriculture and minerals, they will remain the poorest. And now we see an opportunity there, because on average the past 3 years most African economies have been growing about 4–5% in spite of the financial crisis.
Where should Africa be focusing in its investment, do you think?
Africa should do a lot in investing in energy. You need a reliable, cheap energy source in any economy to be able to be competitive globally, and you need investments in infrastructure. The potential for growth we see in agribusiness. For example, some estimate that Africa can produce up to 19 billion liters of ethanol, which is about 25% of global demand. That's a growth opportunity. Africa still has 60% of the world's uncultivated lands. So we can be the breadbasket for the rest of the world. But in the energy front, we see initiatives now, for example, to produce energy in Northern Africa from solar to supply Europe. So when you look at the energy domain, where I spend quite a bit of my time now as chair of UN Energy, in that area alone we see great potential for Africa.
Africa is riding the green wave, but in some ways it's also driving the green wave, because these countries, as they're developing with a green mentality, and as opposed to a lot of the rest of the world, which is just catching up to thinking about these green technologies.
And in fact, that's what we want African countries to do, to begin to look at this new revolution. As you know, Lord Nicholas Stern, the climate economist, says there is already an industrial revolution taking place driven by clean energy. But this has to be accelerated. In the case of Africa, we can leapfrog immediately. We don't have to entirely depend on fossil fuels. We do have probably the 10% of the world's oil and gas reserves, but combined with renewables, we can be an engine in this new revolution.
But what about capacity? I mean, how big are foreign companies, how big of a part are foreign companies playing in this?
There are a lot of foreign companies that have an interest. The difficulty we have is ensuring that you have a stable, predictable public policy. Second, you need a clear energy plan. These are capital-intensive investment plans. It is very difficult for a country to make a bet in an African country if there is not a clear plan and the assurance that policy will be stable for at least 7 to 10 years. Also, we need to deal with the issue of skills in various countries, engineers and so on. But of paramount importance is stable public policy to incentivize green investments, and also a little bit of a clever use of aid money. We need to use aid money, funding from World Bank and others, to de-risk investments going into infrastructure, but also into green energy technologies.
You also work very intensely on the resource curse. The world's the countries with the most precious minerals and natural resources are some of the poorest. And why aren't these countries benefiting from these richness in wealth?
Well, these countries have to be smart now. 300 years ago, they supplied quite a bit of natural resources to the rest of the world, some of it under colonial regimes. Today, I think there is enough best practices around the world to see how you can use natural resources to transform your economy.